Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Hugh Freeze, Auburn, wrapping up fall camp. And I feel like we learned a lot about this football team over the last couple of weeks now. We have some nitty gritty storylines that I want to talk about, some small storylines that I think matter for Auburn going into 2025. But I want to start a little bit more broad. I think for a lot of Auburn fans who have followed this program closely for a long time, follow this program during the offseason, I think many Auburn fans knew when Hugh Freeze first got Auburn in 2023, this team wasn't even close. From a talent standpoint, there was no way they had the opportunity to compete at the highest level of the sport. And I think what we've learned from Auburn during fall camp is going into 2025, they do what people aren't talking enough about. Like, I know the national media, they want to talk about Hugh Freeze. They want to talk about the play calling. They want to talk about the quarterback play. This Auburn defense has the opportunity not just to be good in 2025. They were good in 2024. They have the opportunity to be great. I would get up here and argue before the season even kicks off that this Auburn defense is going to keep Auburn in every single football game that they play in 2025. And I'm not getting up here and saying that, Hugh Freeze, the play call and the quarterback play don't matter. It certainly does. When I look at this Auburn team, there is a ton of confidence that this defense has the opportunity to really be the leader of this program, leader of this team in 2025. And it's not just because of the talent that we see on paper. Now, I think one of the biggest storylines that nobody is talking about is one, DJ Durkin did a great job coaching this defense last year. Auburn paid a lot of money to have DJ Durkin coming back in 2025. And then I'm looking at this depth chart and say, hey, the players that are expected to start for Auburn in the 2025 year, they ain't no red, they ain't no purple in that one deep. You're looking at a bunch of guys that were really good last year for Auburn that are going to be back running the same defense in 2025. And even more importantly than that, the small lingering question marks that we had about this defense, I would go out and argue I'm feeling much better about those question marks right now after fall camp than I felt at the beginning of August as we were kicking off fall camp. Number one, depth on the defensive line. That was, I know Auburn's got some dogs on the defensive line, headlined by a guy like Keldrick Falk. Going to go top 15 in the NFL draft. What I wasn't sure of, how deep was this unit, specifically on the inside? Hey, how many bodies do we trust to play in 4 quarters of a football game? How many bodies do we trust to play throughout 12 games of a season? Many Auburn fans who have followed this program closely know it's one thing to have good players. It's a whole nother thing to have depth, to have a lot of deep, good football players. I think Auburn has that. I think you got that question answered during fall camp. How about that off-ball linebacker room? We knew Auburn had the opportunity to be good at linebacker because they got a ton of talented athletic profiles in that room. We hadn't really seen many of them play, kind of confused about what we were going to get. The floor was relatively low. We know we have a high ceiling. I would argue at the end of fall camp, we have a better feel for, hey, this linebacker room should be at least pretty dang solid for Auburn in 2025. You've heard all the right things from DeMarcus Riddick, heard all the right things from a freshman Elijah Melendez, hearing good things about Robert Woodyard. Then you look at the secondary. I ain't breaking any news. This Auburn secondary should be absolutely nails. I look at it and say, the defense is what nobody's talking about with Auburn. That really gives them the opportunity to win a lot of football games in 2025. And now we're going to get into some smaller storylines, talk a little bit about the offense. Hey, if this offense comes together, we know this team has the opportunity to win 7, 8, 9 football games. Can they go out and win 10? That question has a lot more to do with the offense than it does with the defense. But you make no mistake about it, this defense has the ability to be great because of the talent, because of the continuity, because of the coaching staff. Not enough people are talking about it. That's the biggest takeaway that we've gotten from Auburn during fall camp. Want to get into some smaller storylines before we do, and as always, to the Auburn fans, appreciate you guys, man. And many of y'all have been rocking with the boys for a very long time. We've seen Hugh Freeze. We've broken down so many commitments. We've seen him build this roster to where it's at going into 2025, and now we get to see it all pay out. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, I want to start with, I think, a big storyline that is these freshman defensive linemen, they go and play. Now, the question that we had going into fall camp was, can we rely on these freshmen to be solid depth rotational players on this defensive line? I think we got our answer. Jordan Crawford going to play. Malik Autry going to play. Darian Smith going to play. Now, what we kind of learned throughout fall camp is these freshmen have the opportunity to be difference makers. I think it starts with Jordan Crawford, but I'm going to point to Darian Smith real quick and say, look, I don't know if Darian Smith is going to play a ton of football for Auburn. He's 6'2", 280 pounds, a little bit of a tweener. The reports coming out of fall camp about this kid as a pass rusher, he's going to provide value. And that was kind of what you're looking for. Look, we got some veterans on this defensive line, whether they've already been on the roster, whether we added them in the portal, that we know can be run-stopping presences. We just knew that they weren't necessarily juiced-up pass rushers. Can Darian Smith provide that role for Auburn in 2025? Don't have to be 40 snaps a game. Heck, I don't even know if it'll be 20 snaps. 15 snaps, pass rushing juice, that's huge for Auburn going into 2025, especially when you look at the SEC landscape and say, look, a lot of teams in the SEC that have question marks about their offensive lines. Auburn has the ability to dominate a lot of teams up front. That was something they know, to the Auburn fans who've been rocking with the boys in the offseason, we've quietly talked about. Now, everybody wanted to talk about Walker White committing to Auburn, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Deuce Knight. What Auburn's quietly done on the defensive line, that's kind of what makes this defense a little bit different going into 2025. They have the bodies that look like Georgia and that look like Alabama. That's a huge storyline. Number 2, Kieran Crawford. Hey, can we give a little love to one of the most underrated football players on this roster, maybe even in the SEC? Now, why is he underrated? You take a look at the box score. He's not exactly lighting it up. Go look at some of the advanced analytics. He was second on this football team in quarterback hurries last year. He was an extremely disruptive pass rusher that probably struggled to turn that disruption into production. Everything we're hearing from him is that he's going to take a step going into 2025. Heck, there have been scouts that have gone to Auburn. Look, they're watching Keldrick Falcon. They're watching Eric Singleton. There were some scouts that were watching a guy like Kieran Crawford too. That's an NFL draft pick potentially that nobody's really talking about. You get Kieran Crawford taking the step. You get the same version that we know we're going to get from Keldrick Falk. You get Amaris Williams taking the step. It's going to be a problem for a lot of opposing offensive lines to try to block up. And then we talked about it, so we don't have to talk about it a ton, this linebacker room. I think we knew it always had the ceiling really, really high. When you have a guy like DeMarcus Riddick, this unit has the chance to be good. What stands out to me the most, we're starting to feel better about 3, 4, 5 other off-ball linebackers in this room. Wasn't sure if it was going to be a liability. I don't think it's going to be a liability. In fact, I'm sitting here a week before kickoff saying that this could be a dang good unit for Auburn. Now, I want to go to the offense real quick because, again, this is where I think the most important conversation comes into play. Number one, and most importantly, I think you feel better about the running back room, not only from a depth standpoint, but you're having some difference makers potentially emerge, most notably a guy like Omar Mabson. If you're an Auburn fan, you hope to replace the production that Jarquez Hunter gave you by a committee, but it'd be really damn nice if you get one running back that steps up and becomes a difference maker. And I'll look at it and say, why is it so important? Well, the whole conversation we're getting into is, how can we settle in Jackson Arnold? How can we get the confidence back for this kid in 2025? Giving him a good run game would go a long way in doing that. Now, the second thing is that you run the football well, you take some pressure off your offensive line and pass protection. I still think that this offensive line will be solid in pass protection. And again, look, I get the reports that we've heard in fall camp. I think that has more to do with the studs you have on the defensive line than a guy like Xavier Chaplin not being a good football player. Because I look at Xavier Chaplin and say, we know this guy's an NFL caliber dude. We've seen that version from him at Virginia Tech. I still have some confidence in this offensive line, even though the reports out of fall camp have been a little bit murky. Last question is, hey, how do we maximize these pass catchers? Because as much as I want to talk about the run game, if Auburn does go out and win 10 football games, this passing attack has to be dynamic. It has the pieces to be dynamic. Now you're Hugh Freeze and say, hey, we got a lot of guys who are difference makers. How can we get them all on the football field in spots where they can be successful? A guy like Perry Thompson, like he's emerged as a guy that we got to try to figure out a way to get opportunities. And I'll go back to why Auburn chose Eric Singleton. Not only was he probably the best wide receiver in the portal, but his versatility, like his ability to play the boundary. But hey, if you want to try to get Perry Thompson on the field, put Eric Singleton in the slot, get Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson on the outside. How can you get all these difference makers on the field? How can you put them in positions to be successful? We've learned a lot about this football team, going to be led by the defense. And we know they're going to have the opportunity to win a lot of football games just because of this stingy defense. The question is, if you become a playoff team, this passing attack needs to come alive. We'll close it on there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Baylor Auburn preview coming out soon. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.